Welcome everyone to the game between Praggnanandhaa and his opponent in this game is Varuzhan Akobian. Varuzhan, a very experienced grandmaster. He played for Armenia before. Now he's playing for the US flag. He's also the coach of the St. Louis University there. And Prague, well, he is playing in round number 4 of the World Blitz Championship 2025. Always exciting to see Prague in action. He will be playing in the candidate. And look at that respectful handshake by Akobian. You all must definitely check out his amazing videos on the St. Louis channel where he's teaching some of the concepts. Amazing stuff. He's a fantastic teacher, but also a very strong player. Let's see how this game pans out. The players are ready. Here it's going to be 3 minutes plus 2 seconds increment, and a handshake there, and off we go. Pawn to d4 by Var, knight f6, knight comes to f3, and Prag plays his pawn to e6. We have c4, and Prag's favorite Bogo Indian is on the board. Queen comes to e7, pawn to a3, pushing the bishop away. Takes, queen takes now, so that you can develop your knight to the c3 square. Prag quickly castles it out, and Akobian brings his knight to c3. He have pawn to d6 so as to put your pawn to e5, opening up the bishop on c8, and pawn comes up to e3 to bring the bishop out, and white can quickly castle. e5 played by Prag. Decision moment for Varuzhan here. Should he take on e5? Should he let Prag push his pawn forward? What are his options here? He can play bishop e2. He does it. When Prag takes here, he can even take back with the pawn. And so now he plays pawn to e4. Knight goes back to g1. Well, that's maybe not the best place for the knight. Prag goes bishop f5. Now there's a... Whoa! What a move here, by the way, by Akobian. He's going bishop c2, knight e2, knight g3. Wow, that's just incredible maneuvering. Rook e8 by Prag. So I was talking about this concept that Aaron Nimzowitsch spoke about, which was called overprotection. And he says that find the most important spot in your position. For black, it's the pawn on e4, and simply overprotect it. And when you overprotect it, what happens is your position naturally improves, even though you're not doing anything special. It's kind of crazy, because white, if ever, goes f3 to open up. Look at all black pieces that will open up. So, when you overprotect your important points, you're not letting opponent also break free easily. What a great thinker Aaron Nimzowitsch was. Castles here for white. And now knight to f8 played by Prag. Okay, I'm like, let's go bishop c2, let's go knight g3. But Prag already has several defenders on the pawn, so it's not so easy to win that pawn. Akobian now has to decide his next priorities. He goes bishop c2. And Prag has to decide whether he wants to play d5 or not. Because in some ways d5 does cement his pawn on e4, but he prefers not to do it because that would open up lines on the queen side. So he goes h5, and this pawn can be very potent. It can go h4, h3, very strong. And Akobian now kind of totally zoned in. He pushes his pawn to d5. And with this, what he would like to do is get his knight to the d4 square, and then maybe put pressure on the c6 pawn. So Prag, maybe for him the most logical move is to play c5. But then he would be giving white a protected passer on d5 square. So maybe pushing the pawn, not an easy decision here for Praggnanandhaa. He has to take care of the time on the clock. Players going down below 2 minutes on the clock here. And Prag goes h4. So he wants to play h3. I'm a bit worried about the fact, what are you going to do about d takes, b takes? He does it, he takes it. Pawn takes, and now knight d4. attacking the bishop and the pawn. Maybe the bishop will simply drop back to d7. That's the plan, I guess. Maybe that's the way in which white should continue. Knight d4, bishop d7, and don't let the black pawn come to h3. Just play h3 on your own. Because once the black pawn comes to h3, all the light squares become weak. So Varuzhan does that immediately. He plays h3. He's been playing incredibly good chess. Knight g6 now. Prag's knight comes. You know, Prag is trying to build up a real mass of his pieces on the king side to launch an attack at some point. Rook d1 played, just attacking the d6 pawn. He plays his rook to d8. Maybe he wants to keep this rook here so that later he can play a5. And now a very cool move is b5. Because then you're fighting for the d5 square. If he plays c5, your knight can jump from f4 to d5 later. There are many possibilities. So b5 seems like a nice point. He goes knight to d4, the bishop drops back to d7, rook a c1. Akobian using all his experience to put pressure on Praggnanandhaa here. And now Prag, he would love to attack on the king side, but it's not so easy. White's pieces are beautifully positioned. b5 is something you want to do. Maybe bishop e8. Just drop the bishop back. But Prag does need to take care of the time on the clock. He's down to 50 seconds. While Akobian has 1 minute. Go, 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 Prag. Come on. a6 played. With maybe stopping b5 in this position. But there are possibilities, by the way, to go f4 here, which is a very, very strong move. It's so difficult to play this move f4 because after e takes f3, you go boom, bishop takes g6, fg, and knight f3 with a very nice position for white. Notice how this rook has gone to e8. No, he doesn't go f4, he goes knight e2. Just being a little bit indecisive there. Bishop comes to f5, knight d4. Akobian may be happy with a draw. Repetition here. His position is better, but he's facing Prag. Not an easy decision. What is he going to do? He says, okay, I'm okay with a draw. Prag, are you okay with a draw? Prag is like, I'm the stronger player here. Although my position isn't great, I can still continue. He goes bishop c8. Maybe he wants to put bishop on b7, where it will be not such a great piece, but it will be helpful to play d5 later. a4 played. And now it's time to go bishop b7. Oh, Prag going for the central pawn push, goes d5. b5. Wow. Simply hacking the entire structure. AB, AB. And he plays CB. Okay, now you have so many options. You can take CB. You can take CB, CD, knight d5. He takes with the knight. Knight takes, pawn takes. White is clearly better. The d pawn is an absolute monster here. And Prag now, what does he do? He goes bishop b7. d6 played. Queen comes to g5. Okay, now very important move. Queen b4. He goes bishop b3. Knight jumps into e5. Prag's knight is coming into the d3 square, threatening knight f3. All of a sudden, White's position in danger. Oh, he blunders here. Knight d3 attacking the rook and f2. He goes knight f4, but now pick up the rook. Prag. Simply take the rook. No, he doesn't. He plays rook d6. Well, Prag is very smart. Queen c2. And now rook c8 should do the deal. It's a very good move. Rook c8. Just winning material. No, he goes rook f8. King comes to g1. Rook f6 played. A good move there. Because if you take here, pawn takes, you start attacking on g2. Queen comes to c7. And rook takes f4. Excellent move. He goes bishop a8. Rook a1. Knight takes. Pawn takes. Takes on f4. And now rook to d7. He pushes e3. Mate on g2 coming up. E takes f2 check. King f1. And now boom. Prag sacks his queen. And Varuzhan is shaking his head there. Because king g2. Prag makes another queen. And if king h2 rook f2 is a mate. And he resigns there. Praggnanandhaa wins. Ooh, that was really hard thumping at the end, and you can see Akobian, he knew that he controlled the game for almost majority of it, but that's blitz. Towards the end, if you lose control, you lose the game, and Praggnanandhaa just shows what a beast he is. Excellent chess, excellent play, really enjoyable game. Let's try to understand the key moment where the things turned completely around. White in this position is better, and he plays the move d6. Prag brings his queen here, and now queen b4 was a nice move. Because imagine if you play queen b4, there's no time to play knight e5, because now knight f4 and the e4 pawn is also very, very weak. But instead, white went bishop b3, knight jumped in, and now it was important to find a way through to this. So queen c3, if knight comes to d3 now, you have queen c7. This would have given white an excellent chance because f7 and b7 both are hanging. But instead, he went king h1. He was afraid of knight f3 check, which wasn't too strong. And now knight jumped into d3, attacking the c1 rook and also the f2 pawn. Knight came to f4, and here Prag could have taken calmly the knight rook on c1, but he thought maybe the d6 pawn is more important. So he takes here, queen c2. Maybe the best thing was to take here, because after rook takes d3, you play queen b4 and white is still in the game. But once he plays queen c2, now rook f8, rook c8 followed by taking on c1 would have been nicer, but I guess Prag would have been a bit afraid of the queen sack. Take, king h7 here, but well, bishop takes f7, this does not work. Knight takes f2 is just game over. So that's the reason why here rook f8, king g1, and now here is where could have played rook f4, because after e takes f4 you have knight f4 with a really huge mating attack here. But he went bishop a8, rook a8, rook a1, and now knight takes f4, pawn takes, rook takes f4, rook d7 was the final error. Maybe here queen d6, just staying in here, threatening something like takes and takes. So like let's say e3 would absolutely not work because of take and take on a8, and white is back in the game. But he had no time, he went rook d7, and here e3 is then a finishing stroke. Rook a8, you could potentially take the rook as well, but Prag spotted that takes is game over because of this final, losing the board here, king f1, and this beautiful queen sacrifice with the queen pawn turning into a queen.